Flutter development workshop led by Yashas. Just a friendly reminder that we will be recording this and it will be posted to our YouTube channel, GDG Chapel Hill. And you can find it. I usually do it the day after, so probably by Sunday evening it should be on there. The agenda is pretty straightforward. I don't think it would take us past 7:15 to get done with all the introductions, probably even quicker. And then we just dive straight into the meat of Flutter, and Yashas will guide the way. Before that, Yashas, if you'd like to introduce yourself to the audience, that'd be awesome.
Hi everyone, I am Yashas Majmudar. I am a student at University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. I am pursuing my master's, and I've been developing Flutter apps since like 4 years, and I'm pretty like what do you say? When you're good at something, you try to expand your knowledge. So that's what I'm trying to do, and I think you'll like this session, and you'll get to know a lot about Flutter from this.
Cool. All right. And with that, just before I hand over the helm to you, this is just, well, looks like I have an old image now. They updated the UI. But in general, you should be able to find the chat option on the bottom section of the user interface. And there you can type questions if you have any, and I'll try to coordinate those and pause us and get those questions answered, or find the answer myself and reply that to you. Right, with that out of the way, Yashas, it's all over to you.
Hi, so we'll get started with it. So, just want to give you a brief overview of what we'll do today. We'll get to know a little bit about Flutter. We'll get to know a little bit about a language called Dart, on which Flutter is coded. And we'll do a workshop where we'll build a joke generator from an API. It's a free API, so everyone can use it. And we'll explore some fundamentals behind Flutter and how a real app is built, and like some uh, things about Flutter that I would like to do in any app, some basic folder structure, some basics casings, and all that. So let's get started. So before that, I just wanted to let you know, if you haven't downloaded Flutter yet, you can configure it, and I'll share the links with you. So I can share you the repository which I made. It has a lot of important links. You can just go through the README, and for this repository, this contains all the data that will be required to complete this workshop. And I'll get to it in a bit after we discuss on Flutter a little bit more. So I hope you can do like a multitasking kind of thing. Try to download the Flutter SDK in the backend and try to configure it through the steps given on the Flutter docs. And we'll just get started with a little bit about Flutter now. So, what is Flutter? Flutter is an open source framework that was developed by Google. And what's best about it? So, if you can imagine a code that would work on any platform without any interpreter. So, currently, most of the things that we use are Java, which works on almost every platform, but it uses an interpreter called the JVM. The JVM converts it into the operating system code, and hence it is a little bit slower, but it is widely used and it's a lot popular. Whereas Flutter, it compiles to native code. The impeller that Flutter compiles the Dart language into the native codes. For instance, Kotlin for Android, Swift UI for iOS, and so on. The beauty about Flutter is using a single code base, we can code for a mobile app, a desktop app, and even web. So why choose Flutter? So Flutter gives us a lot of things that most cross-platform languages have adapted now. The best one is hot reload and hot restart. So just imagine you're developing something, maybe a mobile app, or if you have handled native code, what happens is that write the code, and then you rebuild the app, and it takes a lot of time to just render it on the UI screen. Flutter makes that easy. Just with a push of a button, you can instantly reload the UI changes and the functional changes on the app, either in the simulator or either on the device you're working on. We'll see this in a bit when we are going through the repository. Beautiful UIs, but we can create almost anything with Flutter. So there is an option for custom rendering where you can control each pixel, and you'll be able to have full control on what's being displayed over the screen. Flutter gives high performance 60 FPS animations, and it has a huge community and growing ecosystem. There is a site called flutterpub.dev, which basically has all the packages that you would require to create an app, and you could also publish your own packages. We'll get to it in a bit. So we'll get with the dark language. So a quick start about it. If you already have knowledge about C, C++, JavaScript, it's very similar to that. Has asynchronous support, which means there are futures, which means if you want to wait for a function to actuate or execute before going to the next function, this would be the best thing. It's really easy for JavaScript developers to shift to Dart, as it has similar functions. There are object literals, and string interpolation is absolutely same as JavaScript. So there's a site called Dartpad, which gives you a Dart playground where you can just write and learn a little bit about Dart. So we'll do that in a bit. So let's say there are some constants. There are keywords called var, which means you can initialize any variable and it will assign the data type during the runtime. So let's assign it a string, say ST. And then I can just print this on the console. If I want to make it a number, I can do that too, and it will work similarly. There are other keywords like const or final, which denote that the variable cannot be changed during the runtime when you're executing a code. So if I try to do this, the Dart would throw an error, whereas the var wouldn't. We can assign the data types as well, making this a type safe language. And also, a best thing about Dart is its null safety. So you might have heard about the CrowdStrike bug that almost took down most of the Microsoft servers, that caused some plane outages and airplane disruptions and all that. So the base of that was a null pointer exception. So that null pointer exception is if there has been a variable that's generated, but it's pointing to a null reference. So Dart omits that by having null safety. So if an object is null, and you want to modify it, it will automatically give such error. And on the ID, the linters would automatically say that it will direct to you to a null pointer. So what we can do is add a null safety check, and there you go. So we use things like this similar in our workshop. So this is a little bit about Dart. We'll also be using the futures and async await to fetch the API from the server and then render a random joke. About string interpolation, it is similar to JavaScript as dollar, then you could write maybe braces, initialize another variable, have it entered here, and then just print A. So there you go. You can also just write $B, but if you have multiple statements, for example, if you want to put a truth statement or an if statement inside it and print it, you can do like have the brackets around them and it would automatically convert it. So this is the beauty about Dart. It's very easy. It's similar to JavaScript, and most developers can understand it really quickly. So this is a basic setup for Flutter. I use IntelliJ, but you can also use VS Code or Android Studio. You just need to install the Flutter SDK, add it to your path, and run Flutter Doctor to check that all the dependencies and all the requirements are installed on your device to run whatever operating system you want. And then you just need to run a command called Flutter create, and then your app name. The app name should be in a lower snake case. Snake case is like my dash app. Instead of spaces, you need underscore. So in Flutter, everything is a widget. The app itself is a widget. The app's internal structure is a widget. The UI elements and even the styling are a widget. So we'll get to widgets in a bit. There are basically two types of widget: a stateless and a stateful widget, which makes up the whole Flutter framework. And there can be two kinds of apps, say Material app or a Cupertino app. Cupertino widgets are usually related to the iOS side or the Apple side to give more customizability over the UI that looks similar to the Apple UI, and structures are scaffolds, columns, row. We'll get to know more about it when we are doing the workshop. So about states and stateful widgets. So a stateless widget is like a constant variable. When once it's created or once it's rendered on the screen, the stateless widget cannot be changed or re-rendered unless and until the screen is reloaded. So say example, if you're building a counter app and you want to increase the counter by one once you press the button and you use a stateless widget, then you won't be able to view the added count to it. You would need a stateful widget. A stateful widget uses a set state function which rebuilds the entire widget tree from inside the root of the stateful widget. So what we'll do while building a random joke, we'll create some layout, have a scaffold around him, create columns, add an API call which will fetch random codes, manage the state, update the UI when the data arrives, and add some style to the app. Calling an API inside Flutter is really easy. You just need the HTTP package to fetch the data. You create an async function, which is a future function, and then you make the call using http.get, post, or any other API endpoint that you want. You pass the response into a JSON using a JSON decode function, and then display it either with Future Builder or using set states. Future Builder is a really cool widget. So you can handle the loading, error, and success with just one widget. You don't have to manage different variables for it. And so it makes it really easy. But there are some limitations to it too. So the layout with some making it look beautiful. So what I mean by this is the styling. Main thing that attracts a user towards an app is the style of it. A good design gives user the better accessibility and a better user experience, which will allow the user to come back to your app more frequently. You can add padding for spaces. There are containers for styling and size box for dimensions. There are a lot of packages which can allow you to have custom templates built, and then you can just download and use them. It's the beauty of Flutter that it lets you download anything, and having a good community makes a lot of templates. So let's get started with the workshop, repository part of it. Just close everything to make it simpler. So once you've forked the repository and downloaded it or like cloned the repository, you would need to run a Flutter create command. Flutter create in the folder that you're in. So it will generate the build files for it, which means the iOS, Linux, macOS, web, and Android files. You also have the option to provide custom platforms. Say I want to say I want to regenerate the web folder. So I do this and web. So only the web folder will be created here. It takes a little bit time and devices a web folder. When you initially create a Flutter app, which I can show you in a bit. So let's go back a bit. Let's create a Flutter app here. Creating a Flutter app is very simple. You just create a folder, then you run flutter create dot, and that's just it. Flutter CLI will automatically create all the files that are needed for it. And as you can see, similar files have been created: the Android, iOS, Linux, pubspec YAML, git ignores, and Dart tools. So let me inform you a little bit about what the main folder structure is. So there's this file, the pubspec YAML, which is used to define the dependencies that you'll be using in your system. For example, this is the base Flutter file. You will get a lot of comments. You can just remove them. If you want to publish a package, just remove this line, and you'll be able to publish a package on pubdev. So what you do is flutter pub get initially to get all the dependencies. After that, if you want to add a dependency, you can just go to pub.dev, which is the official repository manager for Dart and Flutter. Search for a package, say HTTP or any other package. So there are a lot of packages that would allow you to fetch APIs. So I'll be using this HTTP package, and for that I just need to do flutter pub add HTTP. Oh, sorry, typo. So this automatically adds a latest version of the HTTP in this. There are a lot more commands that are mentioned on the README which allow you to upgrade the package or view whatever packages are outdated versions. And it also informs you about the interdependencies of packages on each other. Flutter CLI automatically manages everything from the dependencies, and if some dependencies is dependent on another and it cannot be upgraded. Then there is the lib folder. The lib folder contains your source code for all the files, source code for your app. So the base structure would just be main dart. This is a custom structure that I use. I use core where I add constants, and utilities where I have different files containing different structure. I have screens which will render different screens on the app, the widgets for particular screens or global widgets, and then the main dart file where you call the app. So to run the app, the run app function is used, and inside it is passed a widget. So see here, I've used a stateless widget. So I don't need to rebuild the app again and again. If I don't need to rebuild the app again and again, like the initial root widget, but I can use multiple stateful widgets inside this so that it can be rebuilt. So I'll use the material app. It is the most commonly used, and you can modify it accordingly to your preference. And the beauty of Flutter is that you can generate platform specific code. Just use the platform.is, and then you can write return Cupertino app. And then you can specify the app themes, the home, the title, and so on. There are a lot of things that you can add. Here, if you hover over it, you will get a list of the if you hover over it, you'll get the list of the parameters that you can add to it. So basically, we'll just need these. The home page would be this screen. So let's run it as a web. Okay. Sorry. Yeah, the platform command doesn't work on the web part of it. So you can use the k is web to check if it's a website. Otherwise, you can use the platform for platform specific code. So this is the base screen that you'll see when you use the flutter create dot command. It's a counter app, as I said, using a stateful widget. So the basic, you click the button and the state is created. There is this irritating debug banner. So to remove this, what we can do is just use the flag debug show check mode to false. And there you go. So I told you about the stateless and the stateful widget. Let's try it with a stateless widget. So let's see what happens. This is a stateless widget. It has a counter variable which gets incremented on the button press. So this, okay, the button is pressing, it's even actuating, it's even calling the function, but it will not change unless and until a set state is called, where when you have to use a stateful function. So let's go to the root of this screen. So for a stateless widget, you need to have a build function which overrides it and allows you to write the code that is being rendered on screen. You use a scaffold widget to render the screen. The scaffold widget gives you a lot of options like the app bar, the body. It is basically something like an HTML tag. So you need to wrap a scaffold over any screen. Otherwise, the output would have a lot of issues. For example, if I just remove this and say, let's try this. We take the body and we'll just go outside scaffold and then try. So see, nothing is rendered. The theme is not there. The text has a weird decoration. So you need a scaffold to have all the decorations and the theme that you mentioned here, the material app. This accesses everything from the material app. Yeah. And similarly, a stateful widget. For a stateful widget, you need to have a class which extends the stateful widget. Extend is similar to having like inheritance. So you can also pass parameters like this. The required keyword is used so that this parameter is compulsory and cannot be omitted. Then you create another class which extends the state of this class. And there you have this set state function, which will increment the counter. So going back, we have this demo stateful. And then when we try, yeah, we have the set state now. There is another thing we can do is like the init state. Init state runs before your widget renders. So like before rendering the scaffold, this function would be called. So like I want to initialize my counter, say at 10, or maybe any passed value from this. The title can be accessed from widget, like widget.title. Similarly, if you want to initialize somewhere here, say like I want to initialize a counter at something, let's pass it here and add require this dot counter cd start, and then I can have here widget dot ct start, and in the main I'll pass the parameter as ct start as 10, and then when I reload the app, the counter starts at 10. So this is some few things that the the stateful function allows, stateful widget allows us to do. So I've told you about a bit about this. We use the scaffold, we use the app bar, that's all widgets. We use the title text. The actions parameter allows you to add buttons or text on the app bar, which is clickable. So in case of this, this is an clickable icon which I've added. You can also add a leading parameter, which will basically assign a widget here towards the start of the app bar. It's usually useful for the back button. We'll see in the next screen. So we have the so to navigate to pages, what we do is we use the navigator class, navigator.push. This arranges everything in a stack. So the navigator is capable of route handling. Navigator arranges everything in a stack. The push uses puts like screen on top of each other, and push the previous screen to an inactive state. You also have the ability to replace. So what replace means is that it will just replace the current screen with the next one, which means you cannot go back. So let's try this if it works. So it goes to the next random generator scene. This is a joke generator that we discussed. Let's dive a little bit deeper into it, and I don't want to restart everything, so I'll just add the home to the joke screen. So let's go to the root of joke screen. What is there? Here, so we have a scaffold which is required. We have an app bar which renders a title. We have a leading icon which will basically allow us to go back. So in case when I try to push the screen, like in the demo screen, when I try to put the button and it would go to the next screen, and if I had this back button and I would press it, it would go to the previous screen. So let's try a demo of it. Going here, this adds to a new stack, and the stack is popped when I press the back button. So let's skip this for a bit, as we will make it the main screen of our home, and thus we do not want to go back. Because if you go back from the home screen, you'll just be rendered a white screen. And unless you reload the whole app, you won't be able to see it. So we'll just remove this and try a few things. So let me give an overview of what I did. I used a column widget to render three widgets. A column widget will render it in a vertical manner. A row widget would render it in a horizontal manner. You can use this to create custom grids, or you can use the grid view, which will basically arrange everything in a grid. We also have the list view builder, which will arrange it in different lists, and we'll implement that in a bit too. So here what I'm doing is I'm using the text which has the joke, which the initially it would be a generate joke. Then I have a button which on press would call this function, which would fetch this API. So why I've used set state two times here? So as I said, we could either use a future builder, or we could use a set state to randomly load states and create them. So having bool loading as a variable where I can store it and render it accordingly if the loading is true. This is called a ternary if condition. So load if loading, then show circular progress indicator, and if not, then render the text. The sized box can be used to have blank spaces in between the column, and the text button basically renders a text and create a clickable instance of a widget. We can also have a container. A container is the most common used widget. It is similar to a div. It gives us a lot of customization options. Say box decoration, which has a border radius, shadow, color, and all that. Say color dot colors dot red. I just want it to be the height of 10 and the width of 20. And then when I reload it, we can see a red container here. But this isn't clickable. So if I want to use a container with the customizations and have a clickable instance, I'll wrap it with a gesture detector, which gives me plethora of options. So some things like tap, double tap, then having a swipe down action, panning action, cancels, long press, and all that. But this still doesn't give that splash color. So if we see, we can see a splash color here, and say let's increase the size a bit, add a little bit gap to it. So if I press this on tap and then pass a function to it, say print hello, and when I press this, I don't see this splash here. Why? So the gesture detector doesn't have a splash color. It does call the function, but it doesn't have a splash color. It's basically used when using web widgets or while using something if you want to make it clickable but not have a splash color over it. To have a splash color, we could just wrap this in an inkwell. Say colors dot. Let's try this. So if you see, you can see a yellow color glow. I can change it to blue. Let's try this. Oh, so as you can see, this is the splash color. So when you're rendering a widget, it creates a stack of widgets. So as you see, when I use the inkwell over the container and added a container color, the inkwell would be behind it and not on top of it. So we add a material widget over it to add the color to the container that we wanted. There is a limitation in the container that we used that, oh, just remove this. When we use a container, we have to make sure that the color element doesn't have in color element isn't in the decoration as well as the colors field. So this would call an error, and our app would be say it would already give us an action that the color cannot be provided to both. A decoration overacts the parameter and overrides everything to display anything and everything in the container. So there are a lot of fields. We can have a decoration image, the border, border radius, box shadow, gradient, and blends. So a lot about this. Let's go to the futures part of it. So when I click the generate joke, it would create a joke. Not a good joke, but what can you do with a free API? So when I press the text button, it fetched a joke. The joke took the HTTP from like the get from this, and to view the loading part, we can move here that the loading is set true when we are generating the joke. And as you could see, it would take a little bit loading time and then it would generate. The JSON decode is used to parse the body into a JSON text, which is a map. And then we can use it here, like the response body, then the setup and punchline, which is the return parameters of this API. So we are setting here the loading to be false and the joke to be this. So this is a basic implementation of how we can uh, implement a future into our state using the set state. But what if I don't want to call this function every time and just want to generate it as soon as I load the widget? You would say that we could use an init state. And just call the fetch here, right? Well, this would cause a little bit problem when there are a lot of data and the joke doesn't work. Joke doesn't uh, like have a faster response. So basically, if we put this in the init state, what would happen is like it would throw an error that the state was called before building the app. The set state cannot be called before building the root widget of it. So press it here, and press restart. So this works as the passing data is earlier, but if I add a future to it, say future dot delay, and add a duration of millisecond seconds as 3, and then try to call the set state, should work. Oh. But an ineffective way to do this is calling this in the init state. What we could do is like create a what we could do is create a future builder which would automatically handle the loading state as well as the init state. So we could have here a future builder. It would require a future, and the future would be fetch joke, and the builder takes functions which are the build context and the snapshot. So the snapshot is basically the data that you get from the API. So in our case, we aren't returning any data because we're using the set state. But if we remove this and return our response body, then our future builder would be easier to work with.
Hey Yashas, there seems to be a question in the chat, and it is that upgrading a Flutter app is hard or used to be hard. Have they made it easier?
So basically, depends on what you mean by upgrading the Flutter app. If you are mentioning the dependencies that are used, it's pretty easier. If you type in the Flutter pub and upgrade command, you can upgrade to major dependencies. And if you put the Flutter pub upgrade and then use a flag called Titan, you can update the all the dependencies to their lower version also. For example, if I have a version of 1.0.0 and then the dependency would be updated and have a version of 2, and you call the Flutter pub upgrade, it would just upgrade it to 2. But if it just increased a minor version, then it wouldn't upgrade it. But you could call the Titan and upgrade it. You have to go through and manually make changes. Yeah, that's true. But uh, you for the Android and iOS part of it, what most of the production level on the production level works is the manifest file never changes, and the uh, local properties which contains the key store properties never changes. So for that, you just need to have a CI/CD pipelines that copy paste all those files into your current folder and and instantly generates your iOS or Android folders. And that way, whenever you upgrade the Flutter CLI, you'll get the latest package on upgrade of Android and iOS. So what I mean by that is most companies, and whenever I've worked with anyone, what we do is in the git ignore we do not upload any of the build operating systems files. We just upload the functions that are required, and we use a CI/CD to dynamically create and build the APK or an IPA whenever it is needed. So the main files that in iOS would be the info.plist. It is the only file that is required, and the pod file is also auto generated, so you won't be like you won't need to make changes continuously. If you have a CI/CD, you can just delete the iOS folder, like before copy the info plist, delete the iOS folder, run a Flutter create iOS, and then just paste the info plist. So uh, on a production level it works that way, that you can just like then that the CLI just copy pastes it into different folders and builds as it goes. We like there is no Android folder that is uploaded on the pipeline, and which makes it so upgrading it is kind of manual, but you can automate everything. But uh, like natively Flutter CLI doesn't give this function to to update the Android console. Yeah, Facebook sign in also works with the same thing. Like I had a Facebook sign which I could add the metadata to the Android manifest file, and that file is the main thing that's being used as far as I've worked with it. So even I upgraded the build Gradle of one of the app that I published, and I just needed to paste the Android manifest of it to upgrade it. Like,
So, is there a Flutter native SDK command or command line operation that you can run to regenerate all of these native files?
yeah, so for that there is the Flutter create dot function which creates all of the operating system files, and in the start also, like you can have it's mentioned in the README too if you want to just go through it. You can use the Flutter create dot to generate all the iOS and operating system files, or you can have a platform specific creation, and you can just paste the main info plist, then the Android manifest to it. Yeah, I agree there should be a cross platform to Flutter upgrade, but it's kind of complicated. So when you're using multiple dependencies in Android as well, some dependencies don't work with the newer versions till they're upgraded, so like automatically upgrading it would be a little difficult. Does that answer your question? uh, we can chat a bit on it more after this session if you'd like. You can connect me on LinkedIn and we can have a chat on that. Sure. So going forward, we'll use the future builder, and we will get the response body from it. I'll just copy paste this. Okay. So while using future builder, what we can do is just go to this, use snapshot.data, which will be the data that is being returned, and render this. We can also check if it is loading or not. So if snapshot dot connection state is equal to connection state dot done, which means the connection is complete and the future is complete, else return circular progress indicator, else just render the joke, right? So here it is, return text and then the data of the text. We'll add a text file to it to increase the size of it so that it's easier to view. Font size 20. Okay. We'll add a comment. Yes. And then when we reload our app, it should automatically generate a joke. And we wouldn't even need these two. Like you could just get rid of them, reload it, and get a joke as soon as it renders. One more thing that we can do with a future builder is like add a key, use an initial data. The keys are basically global IDs for all the widgets, and you can use them to get the context of that widget to get a width of the height. One most important thing that I forgot to tell you about is we can fetch the devices height and size using the Flutter native code, which is like if I want to print the height of the screen that I'm using would be media query, then use the context field text dot um, size, then height. And similarly, you got a width field, an aspect ratio, and all that. So the size would print width and height for both of it. So this is a good thing when you want to make dynamic widgets that that can be rendered on any screen. Like the widget can be customized to like different sizes. The good thing about Dart is using extensions. So extensions are basically mini functions that you can use throughout the app. You can create a function on a particular widget. So for example, I'm using build context in this case. So these are few functions. For example, height. So it will call this automatically and give me the height itself. So I do not have to write this big every time. I can just put in context dot height, and it would give me the height, which would be similar to the media query. So you can create extensions for almost anything. You can create extensions for, say, on integer, and say add, say we say size integer, then add. Get is basically used get as a getter or setter on a function which is a one liner function. So we can say this plus one. We can also add parameters to it, but then we couldn't use the getter function as it doesn't accept any parameters. So let's say one dot add, and it would work very well. So these are a few things that you can keep in mind while creating a Flutter app. This is a very simple Flutter app which gives you like the fundamental parts of it. We can have a text button, we can have an icon button, we can have different types of button, and they also have customizability on hover, on long press, on focus changes, and all that. But the best thing that I like to use is a container. Say I want to make a fancy container with rounded edges. I'll have a size of 50, the height of 50, and the width of 100. I'll have a color. I'll use the box decoration widget. I'll have a color of, I'll use the primary color. So what we can do is like we can create themes. We can create different themes. So in main, let's go back to the basic one. So I've created two themes, the light theme and the dark theme. This widget, the theme data can be assigned to the app, that is the material app or the Cupertino app, and used as indicators to put the theme data of the whole app. So the primary color is this. The light primary is mentioned in colors. It's a color of this. You can also use colors here. Like you can also use the colors enum here. This dot black, and similarly. So I've mentioned some random colors here. I've added them to the theme. The primary color is this. There's a scaffold background color. The text theme would be this throughout the app. And there's this custom app bar theme. And there is this custom text selection theme. There are a lot of themes that you can create, and Flutter gives you access to everything. You can customize as much as you want, uh, and customize to custom make it a custom app and a custom theme for every different scenario. So these are a lot of parameters that you can go through once you're into this. So I use this app bar theme to have an app bar which has center title, have an elevation of 0, have an icon data and background color. I use the color scheme to have different colors. The seed color would be the primary color. There could be a secondary color and a tertiary color, which could be called anytime. So could be called anytime. I mean, so we could just use the theme dot of context dot say secondary color, color scheme. See or dot secondary. So this would call a container with this color. So let's make it a little brighter. Primary. This works. Now I wanted to make rounder edges. So we'll use the border radius and use the border radius widget and use the circular to just enter a radius for all the things. You can just have it only one, which would allow you to curve the edge from any side, any top right, top left, bottom, and all that. I'll use the radius as 13. This looks good. We'll add an gesture detector in it. I don't want a splash color as I don't find it much useful in web cases. I can use the fetch joke here for on tap and it would work. So let's go back, use the initial set state to call everything. And use our new container. So on pressing it can change whatever is required. You can also add a child to the container, which could be any widget. Say, I want to use an image this time. To use an image, we use the assets folder. The assets folder can have any amount of folders, any name, or any custom names that you can put to, but you have to mention it inside the assets. Like you have to mention everything that you want to be included in your app or to be built with the app inside your pubspec.yaml. We define it by using assets and then mentioning the path of it. To fetch the asset or to render it, we'll use image dot, which has memory, network, file, and asset. So I'll use the asset because it's a local asset and use assets, images, and flutter.png. You can also create a custom, you can also create constants for it in the constants file and use it every time so you don't have to keep managing it and assign a size to it. So we'll just try this. And here you can see the flutter thing. But it's going through the edges, so it doesn't look that good. Let's do one more thing. We can add padding to the container. So we use the edge instincts to add the padding. We'll use all of them. We can have a symmetric padding too. We can add a symmetric padding. Say we want a horizontal padding to be 10 and the vertical padding to be 5. We can also add margins. Say edge inserts dot only, then I want a top margin of 20. This means that I don't have to include this. See, it's better now. So there are a lot of styling options which allow you to style the Flutter widgets as you want. But now if I don't want to add a margin to it, how can I do? So a new Flutter update just rolled out and it allows you to add a spacing option to the column. So the spacing option to column or rows widget means that it would put spaces in between of every child. So there are two children here, this one and this one. So it puts a 20 unit gap between them. So it's the developer choice what they want to do, like create a container with margin or like have spacing towards it. So these are really basic things that we could do. And as you could see about the theme that we said, what's the use of theme? So we could have two themes, like light theme or a dark theme. But what's the use of it if it's just showing one color and nothing else? So Flutter automatically manages theme based on your system. So my system is put on dark mode, so it just takes the dark theme. But if I say we don't have a dark theme, so it would automatically switch to a light theme. But if I had a dark theme, but I want to initialize it as light theme, so I would put theme mode to light. The default value is theme mode dot system, but this would be better. So it initializes as a light theme. So we'll just refresh this. You can see it initializes in light theme. So there are a lot of packages also which you can use as a switcher to switch between. So something like this, day night theme switcher. There's a lot of things. Hmm. Day night theme switcher. A lot of cool packages and widgets that allow you to instantly switch between the themes. For that, you just need to have a mechanism of having a set state over here and then refreshing the app based on the theme. So I could show you one example of it. So there's also this thing called state management in site Flutter. So state management is basically the persistence of data across different screens. So what does that mean? So that basically dials down if like I have a global variable and I want to use it everywhere. But Flutter doesn't have a global variable, or I'll have to initialize everything at the start in the code, which would not be dynamic. But if I wanted to make it dynamic, I would be using the state management. There are a lot of uh, collisions between state management and like if you type state management on PubDev, you get a lot of things. So the major one of the biggest thing is block, which is a block architecture. That means business logic first, but it has a steep learning curve and it is a little difficult to learn. Then there is Riverpod, which has a which has a less steeper curve and you can learn it very easily. It's a really good state management tool. It has different hooks similar to React, and if you're comfortable with using hooks in React and you're transferring to Flutter, it would be really good to use Flutter Riverpod. There's also a native thing called the value provider, which is a predecessor of Riverpod, and you can use it, but a Riverpod gives you more control over it. Then there is this beginner state management called the GetX, which provides you a lot of things. So it provides you with snack bars, it provides you with storage, it provides you with state management. It has a lot of utilities. It is a complete package, but it's a lot heavy compared to the other ones. So get for beginners, then Riverpod, then Block if you want to go through it. I can attach a link to one of my blogs. Hmm. Which basically says what you want to do. You can have it here. I agree, the Riverpod is great. I use Riverpod in most of my projects, unless and until it's asked by the manager that you have to put a different one. So you can go through this blog. It's really good. It says the difference about the provider, Riverpod, and Block, and you can have a lot of insights from it. So this is all for the joke generation app. It's a really simple app. You can go through it. You can try with different styles. You can customize your colors, to play around it a bit, have different themes of it, try to make this into a switcher that would allow you to change the theme based on the user's input. That would be a good task for you if you want to get started with Flutter. And then you can explore extensions. Going back to our basic Flutter architecture. So this is a very theoretical part. I don't like theory, so I don't like to impose theory, but it's good to know about. I'm more of a practical guy. I love practical. That's why I go directly into the practical, but theory is necessary. So, what is the Flutter architecture? Flutter is made up of widgets, as I told, but when it's building, it goes into a renderer or a painter, which basically paints the data of the widget onto your screen. The inputs is processed by an input processor, which goes into the engine compiler, which converts it into the native code. This all takes place only when you're building the app. That means when you're running your app or when you are passing the build command, which is flutter build and your destination. So there, the destinations could be app APK, which is Android, IPA for Apple, web for web folders. So what it would do is like create a build folder, and inside it create the native code. For example, our native code would be here. So let's try a Flutter build of it. Flutter build web. Uh, Flutter build web. Yeah. So it will start compiling. So based on the data of this, that is the index.html, it will create a Flutter app based in the native code, which is the JavaScript in case of web, and have similar data to this. You can add themes to it. So there's a web folder. You can just copy paste all this data, put it into a Git repository, and publish it as a page, and it would just work fine. So the index HTML is similar to the web index that is there in here, and the base URL is being updated with the Flutter command. There are a lot of ongoing processes behind it, like the Flutter Bootstrap, which basically creates a pipeline to go into the Flutter app, the Flutter Service Worker, which assigns all your data, that is the assets, the Canvas WASM, and stuff, and the Flutter renderer or the pipeline, which goes loads the entry point. So if I wanted to start this, I would just go into the index HTML and run it. So it would be running on my device. So you just need to make sure that the web href is correct. So for GitHub pages, it is usually your repository. And if you have your own server, then this base repository would be fine. So this is a simple project that gave you a bit of the fundamentals of what Flutter is, what Flutter can do, and what you can do with Flutter. So going forward, I'd like to show one of my project, which basically explains all the state management and kind of part of it. So this is the folder structure I prefer to use. The lib, then it has core, which has constants, models, and utilities. The models are basically data classes that I want to create based on the data that I'm receiving from an API or like rendering on the screen. The providers are used to manage states. So let's say for the UI provider, I use a theme mode. So this provider is used to switch the theme between different states. So there's a toggle theme mode, check theme mode, and then I have my main here. So as you can see, there's this light theme and dark theme that I've assigned, and the theme mode. The theme mode is automatically upgraded based on the state management software I'm using, state management package I'm using. So in this case, I'm using Riverpod. In it, we have to wrap our widget with the consumer widget instead of a stateless widget, and it would give this parameter, the ref. The ref is used to watch over any values that are changing or watch over any data. And this is watching over theme mode, which means that whenever the theme is being changed, it automatically refreshes the whole app and renders the theme. So the term of it would be, so like this, you can just switch it and it goes to a different color. You can switch it, goes to a different color. So you can implement this as a kind of uh, homework for this project. If you want to go into Flutter, it's really good to just practice about it. The best thing to learn Flutter is practice and practice. Apart from that, there are a few different packages that I would like to share with you. So the HTTP package that we use, the Google Fonts package, has over 1,000 fonts which can be directly accessed by a Flutter app. You just need to download the package, go through the example, and just take any font you like and put it in your theme, which would apply to all the app, like all throughout the app. There is a shared preferences, which is uh, basically a native Android thing. Shared preference, if you have been on a native Android developer, you know what shared preferences are. So they are basic simple storage that can locally store an app's data. It can be similar to cookies on a web, or like shared preferences in Android. The Lottie is like a package by Adobe, which can render JSON animations. So this have you heard of Lottie? If so, this is Lottie. It shows a lot of animations, and you can directly put them into your files just downloading the JSON of it. So it's a really good package. I really love to work with it. We can add different animations to it. It's really easy to work with too. So there are a lot of packages at PubDev. You can go and go through it. You can even build an app just using packages and writing the least code as possible. Like you can have a package that provides a template of the whole theme data, the whole themed app, and you just need to pass the colors to it. And similar packages are also there for state management, so you don't need to do anything. So debug and iterate faster. We talked about this hot reload. So what hot reload is? So as you saw, like while making the changes, I just pressed a button and it automatically refreshed. So on the terminal, there is this hot reload. So what it does is that it just refreshes the current widget tree. That means whatever widget, whatever scaffold is there, it will refresh that. So in this case, this scaffold is the root and it will refresh it. But there is also a feature called Flutter Hot Restart. That means it will restart the whole app and rebuild the whole material app instead of just rebuilding the root scaffold widget tree. So this is really cool functions that the Flutter offers developers to develop easily, and Flutter has Flutter provides you to develop your apps very quickly compared to other platforms, like as what I've seen from. So I think you should try to make some apps with Flutter. It's really good. And going forward, so keep learning, keep building. The official documentation is at flutter.dev. There is a lot to learn. There you have a lot of open source projects. One of the company that comes to my mind when I hear Flutter is Very Good Ventures. So they are pioneers in like Flutter development. They provide a lot to the community. They give out a lot to the community. They have a lot of templates, which I was earlier talking about. There are a lot of video tutorials that you can use to learn Flutter, and obviously building projects is the best way to learn. Starting small, building great is good. I myself have a few open source projects. If you would like to contribute to it, you can go through my LinkedIn, find my GitHub, and then you can just go through the open source projects if you'd like that. Going forward, I would like to tell you one more thing that's really cool in Flutter is the hero widget. So we use this to go to the other screen back when we had this stateful widget. So we used the stateful widget to go to the next screen. But what I didn't tell you was there's this cool thing that we can do. So we can wrap this counter text with a widget called hero and assign a tag to it, say hero tag. There can only be one hero tag in the screen and the next screen which is similar to each other. so as the Flutter knows what to render and when, and then go to the next screen and put it over here. I'll put it hero and then tag. You have to make sure that the tags are same, otherwise the like effect won't work. So what hero animation does is like it morphs into the new screen. So let's see. So something like this, but with a bigger screen, with a bigger thing, it would be better to view. Hmm, say container of height 100 and width 200 and color red, and similarly we'll have it over here. We can remove this. We can remove this, change this a bit, say blue. The morphing works best with the containers, and you can see it here too. And it also works with the back button. And this is really good to use when you are using like a detailed list view of data where you want to click on an item and go to the detail screen of it. So this is really good for that. Coming to the list view, I'll tell you a bit about it. Let's try it here. We'll use the random code generator to generate random jokes about we'll create a random list of jokes instead of just getting one joke. So what we'll do is we'll say list of strings and previous jokes, which is empty. Sorry, which is empty. Okay. And when we're entering the joke, we want to add it to the previous joke. So we just add the joke here. So then, just to test it out, we'll print the previous joke and see if it is reloading or not. Print previous jokes. Let's reload the app. Generate jokes. Nice. It is generating the jokes, right? So what we'll do now, add a list view builder or a list view. So below this, we'll add a list view and use the builder function of it. The item builder takes in the context and the index of it. We don't need context as of now as we won't be using that. And render a text similar to a joke based on the previous jokes. And then we provide an item count to it. Previous jokes dot length. This would dynamically build and dynamically build a list to it. So you see this error. So whenever a widget renders outside the screen, you will face this. This is an rendering error, which is a render pass error. So what happens is while using a column, I'm using the maximum alignment as default. It takes the maximum size of the screen and list view also takes the maximum size. So the Flutter gets confused between who to arrange and what. So we wrap it with a flexible or an expanded view or an expanded to give it the maximum size, and use flexible to give it the size it wants. Builder has a lot of properties. It has a scroll controller. It has a physics, which means what do you want it to do? Like you can bounce the list when you want. So we'll add a physics to it and say bouncing scroll physics. So this will basically bounce it whenever we want. And we want to bounce it even if there are no items in the list, or just one item in the list for that instance. We can also put the axis as horizontal to make a horizontal list view, but we'll keep a vertical one this time. So we generate this joke. So as you can see, we have these jokes here, but it's not easy to read. So what can we do? See, we can scroll it, but it's not easy to read. We don't know what to do. So we can just wrap a container around it, or you can also have multiple widgets, like add multiple columns of it. But the best thing would be to add a container, add decoration, add a box decoration, have a border, uh, color as black. Let's try it with this one. So see, we can now see that there are different jokes in this. And similarly, you can have different UI elements that you create to differentiate between the list view. There is also the grid view, which separates everything into a list, but I won't be using that. And if we want it to go horizontally, we would say scroll direction axis dot horizontal. And hence we would have a vertical scroll direction, a horizontal scroll direction. But we would obviously have to change the border side. There is also a divider function, which can be a divider widget, which can be used to just put a divider in between, something like this. You can use multiple widgets with this, wrap it in a bracket, and then you can perform functions over it. Like if you want to have an index in front of the joke, you can add that as well. So let's say I want to create a string. So I would just take this out, put it here, add a return statement. I can also use string interpolation to just add it here, but this would be better. So final str is equal to dollar index dot text dot, let's say previous jokes. So dollar, and this string interpolation would work also here, but I just wanted to show you that we can have multiple functions or multiple uh, things that we can add before the container to use the item builder, and it would build it accordingly. Let's build it here. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on. You can also use just the list view, but it takes children. So you have to compulsorily generate this part of code yourself. So let's try that also. Dot generate rev dot ref jokes dot length. Generator function would take an index, and then you would write here. So this would work similarly, but a problem with this is, supposing you have a very long list, The list view generates all of them, and it will also generate the widgets that are outside the screen that are not being rendered here, which basically reduces the performance of the app. But if we use the list view builder that we used before, this only renders and creates widgets based on what is seen on the screen. So if I do this, the 0th widget would be put in an inactive state and only shown when it is on the screen. So it is really helpful to enhance the performance of the app when you like use the list view builder function. So these are the fundamental things that you would use to build an simple app, and you will always explore on Flutter docs the different widgets that there are and different parameters that you could use in the existing widgets or the basic widgets, and you can explore a bit on them and keep learning towards it. So with this, I would like to end the workshop, and it was really uh, honestly, this was my first workshop. I was very nervous, but it was really great engaging with all of you. And I hope you really liked the workshop. Thanks for joining.
Yep. Thank you, Yashas, for leading this workshop. I think you went through a breadth of topics, and I'm sure this would be a great resource for people here on the call as well as others who watch it after. So, yeah, thanks again for joining GDG Chapel Hill and doing this, taking out the time to share what you know about Flutter with this community. Much
Thanks for
appreciated.
giving the opportunity to do this. It was really great.
And that's all, folks. There is a feedback form which uh, we would be really grateful if you can fill out. It helps us a lot in figuring out what events you want in the future, what went well, how can we improve. So that's feedback is always appreciated. That's in the chat, or you can just type this short link. It is tiny.cc/GDG feedback, no spaces. So, yep, and it is a Google form. You can fill it out anonymously or share who you are if you want us to follow up um, on the feedback. And yeah, thank you all for attending. Have a great night.
Thank you. Have a great night. Bye bye.